how they kind of fit together and why I'm doing them together. So it is recording now. So again, if you don't want your picture on the recording, just go ahead and shut off your camera. Please mute your microphones, but unmute anytime you have questions. And I'm going to share my screen, and then we'll get started. All right, so we are going to be talking about Hyperdocs and choice boards. And like I said, they're really big concepts. I probably jumped too soon because I have a lot of people still coming in. Hang on a sec. All right, if you just joined us, please put it here in the chat. That's how I'm going to take attendance. There's 34, 35 people, I think, that signed up for this. So I want to make sure everyone gets credit for being here. I use the chat as my way to see who is here. So putting in that here is very important so that I can give you credit for being here. All right. The other way is also, as we're going through, if you have questions, type them in the chat. That will be a way I go through everybody's list afterwards when I get the recording. But we're going to talk about two major heavy loads here. We're going to be talking about Hyperdocs and choice boards. Hyperdocs, think of it as and I'm really going to get into the meat of it in just a moment. But Hyperdocs, think of it as a really great way to organize your lessons, especially in this hybrid model. That way, wherever the students finish, they can pick up right on the next day to continue on with their work. And choice boards, everything that we've learned about this generation and keeping students engaged and putting the onus on them, the student agency, is that offering choice really makes a difference. And choice boards are a great way to do that. So it's very different than maybe when we were in school. I know that every day, every child, in my classroom did the same thing every day. And that really isn't always the best for the students. And the way we've kind of shifted things is offering more of those choices. And by doing choice boards, you're going to have the students who want to do a better job or maybe more engaged in the process and really wants to learn more because they're doing something that they enjoy. So we're going to talk a little bit about both of those. In case you don't know me, I am Lori Guion. I'm the coordinator for model schools at BOCES. You can email me with any questions anytime. I'm on 24/7. I seem to be on my email, but I'm here to help you out. I also am very active on Twitter. I have two Twitter handles. I have @SmileLearning, that is my personal one. And then I use the Wish We BOCES MS for model schools as my work one. I post resources, ideas, anything that I've seen people share, because obviously, we just don't have time to create everything ourselves. So if you're not on Twitter, it's a great place to gather information, even if you never post anything. Use it as like your giant Pinterest board or your Wakelet collections, whatever you want to do. You can pull that information right from Twitter. So I highly recommend, especially when you're talking about Hyperdocs choice boards, that you check out those hashtags on Twitter, because there's going to be a lot of information out there for you. So let's talk about why we're talking about Hyperdocs and choice boards for that matter. And I pulled these two quotes from somewhere. I don't even remember where anymore. I've been using them for years. But the one on the left really hit me. It says, "Thanks for that amazing worksheet," said no student ever. And we know sometimes a worksheet makes the most sense. Absolutely 100%. This is what we need to do. But there are times when you could have the students showcase their learning in a different way. And that's where Hyperdocs can kind of do that. It's a transformative activity where students go through a process, and at each point they're getting the information they need. They're giving you some feedback so you can see where they are in the learning process. They're reflecting on their learning. They're engaged because they're kind of driving that learning process. So it really becomes a different way to kind of use those higher order thinking skills. So if you're talking about Bloom's taxonomy, and you're talking about, the basics versus the higher order thinking, your worksheet is your basic. The Hyperdoc is your higher order thinking. Okay. Sometimes basic, it makes the most sense. Sometimes you want to push them beyond that, that basic level. What is a Hyperdoc? A Hyperdoc takes your normal worksheet, but it transforms it into an interactive and engaging lesson. So you're still using and getting the same information that you have on your worksheet, but what you're doing with that worksheet is now you're making sure that you're getting that two-way conversation and you're engaging the students in things that make sense to them. And it could be that you're sending them to a 360 video, or you're having them do a search and find, you're having them do a web quest, you're doing something that's a little bit more engaging for your students. but it still gets them to get to that same point that they still have the same learning objectives in mind, because you always start with what's the learning objectives, what's the outcome you want for your students to have, what's the essential question that you want to make sure they can answer when you're done. When would you use them? You can use it for any lesson in any classroom with any age group. I've seen Hyperdocs used at kindergarten. I've used them at higher ed. They can be used for any subject, any lesson at any time. Do you need to use it for every lesson? No, but you can, and it really does help students understand the process, and it keeps a routine for them the more often that you use that similar kind of format for them. The nice thing about Hyperdocs too is it does allow for the students to, like I said, have that agency, but it also allows for a little more differentiation, because you could have the same Hyperdoc, but because you have choices built in, or how they learn works at their own pace, you're really allowing students to work, where they are, and you're helping support them. Because in a Hyperdoc, when we get to the parts, it has an area where you can extend a lesson, where you can enrich, or you can support if they need extra help. It really does differentiate that learning process. So we know that they've been talking about differentiation, they being, the higher ups or on the internet, wherever you look, they're like, we need to make sure that that the learning process is individualized for a student. But we know that that's not always easy. If you have 30 students, 60 students, 120 students, 200 students, having them each have their own lesson every day can be very difficult. But if you build a Hyperdoc well, it can allow for that differentiation for every student in your class. And really, this does put the work back on the students. And students that are like your high achievers, so your ones that get A's all the time, they struggle a little bit more with this process, because you're putting a lot more on them. It's not the listen to a lecture, regurgitate the information, and move on that they're used to and they're comfortable with. Now it's, here's the information. You're going to have to explain what you learned in this certain way, and then you're going to need to share that information with a more authentic audience. It changes the level of competency, it changes the level of understanding, and it really does put all of the work onto the student. A lot of work for you in the front end building, all the work on them after it's already built. So what does a Hyperdoc look like? On the left-hand side of your screen, you see a full Hyperdoc. These are all the big parts. On the right is what I like to call your basic Hyperdoc, or you might even call it like your simple or your beginner one, whatever you want to do it. Sometimes the one on the right is all you need. So that might be a simple lesson, a simple activity. Could be like if we were talking about that interest inventory, your getting to know you kind of activity, explore, explain, apply might be all that you need to do. For example, I was working with a teacher, and I don't know if you're on the call, so I won't say names or on the webinar, but one teacher was doing an activity where students were exploring the origins of their name. What does it really mean, their name? And they had to explore different resources. She had a video, she had a couple websites, she had different information that will help the students kind of explore their name. So in the explore part of the Hyperdoc, that's what they did. They watched the video, they explored all of those different things. In the explain, there was some meat of why origins happen, some of the the way words are, and some information to kind of help students understand why understanding how words are formed and how they are created kind of happens. So that was within the explain part. And then in the apply, the students had several choices of how they were going to showcase what their name meant. And they could interview their parents or whoever to see why they were called who they were. For example, like my name is Lori. My mother named me after the girl on the Partridge Family. Susan Day's character was named Lori. She liked the name, so there I go. I have the name. So they can have those kind of stories. And then if they don't have that, they have all the information when they were exploring those resources and they were learning in that explain part. And then they had to put it together in some sort of package, whether it's a slide deck, a post, maybe a little mini podcast, whatever it happens to be, to apply. If you look at the one on the left, that full one, what you're going to do is take that 3-part one and really expand it out. So engage is your hook, and we're going to go through each part a little bit more in detail. And then they're going to do that explore, where you give them some things to kind of let them do free exploration. The explain is the meat of your lesson. And then the apply is the work that they do. Share is where the students are sharing their work with an authentic audience, and we'll talk more about that. And then you have the reflection and the extend. Now, if you look at the top 10 education systems in the world, And we're not in the top 10 by any means in the States, but if you look at those top 10, they spend the majority of their school day in the reflection part of the learning process. In the States, we tend to spend most of it in the explain part. What's the difference? Well, the explain is teacher directed. This is the information. We're giving them the information. For the reflection part, the students are saying, here's what I know. Here's what I'm not sure about. Here's where I'm curious, and here's where I want to go next. So you can see that there's this difference where the students now have control over what they're going to do and where they're going to go next. And we'll talk more about that too. And then the last one is the extend. And this is the one where you really can easily differentiate, because you can choose where the students are going to go based on how they did in their apply, share, and reflect part. You can choose where they extend. So if you're doing something like the one I was giving you with the name, maybe students realize they really have an interest in Latin. So maybe the extension could take them out to learn some basic, Latin terms, or how to conjugate one of the verbs or something like that, whatever it happens to be. Or the extend could be they didn't really get it, and now we're going to give them something else to kind of build that foundation that they seem to be lacking. So I'm going to give you a copy of this slide deck when we're done, and you'll notice at the bottom of this slide there is a template website that's going to bring you out to the Hyperdocs website to give you access to the templates. All right, before I get into the meat of it, let me just check and see if there's any questions. Any questions that any of you have, you can put them in the chat, or you can unmute and ask. We're good? All right. At any point, interrupt me. I'm really okay with that. So let's go into the meat of Hyperdocs. Engage being the first one. When do you do that? You engage your students by doing a video, a podcast, a meme, quotes, polls, quizzes, discussions. You can really engage them in anything that really is going to make them really want to learn. No different than I used to introduce the 3 things essay that we used to all write. And I would bring in a brown paper bag with my 3 things in it, and I would leave it in the front of the room, and the students would come in and they'd ask, what's the bag? Well, you'll just have to wait and see. I was getting them engaged. I wanted them to learn. I wanted them to be excited about the process. And that was before Writers Workshop. Writers Workshop does some great engage kind of activities that are really built in. Some of my favorite ways to engage: Breakout EDU, a Pixar short, a 360 story, a game, anything along those lines that's going to make them want to learn more. And then when you get to the explore part, this is where you're giving them some of the content, but you're allowing them to figure it out for themselves. So I threw in these pictures here of just some activities I've done with kids. And in this one, the students had the cups lined up and they chose where they would be on the grid. And then they had to try to code the robot to go around the cups without knocking them over. Or sometimes they had to knock them over or plow them, different things. And it allowed them to kind of figure things out on their own. So they got to explore. I didn't tell them how to do the code. They got to explore to try to figure those things out. Other ways you can do that: augmented reality is a great way to do that. If you're an iPad school, or if you have access to iPads, there's a really cool app called Jig Space. It's J-I-G and then the word space, where it takes something like the solar system, but it breaks it down into parts using augmented reality. And then Jig also has a workshop one where students can then create their own jigs as they go through the process. You could do this on a tour builder where the students are exploring different places in the world and they're adding in their information and their anything that they need to gather as they're going through. You could do a YouTube video, a Wonderopolis article. Really, you can do anything in the explore. In the explain, this is, like I said, your direct instruction. So this is where you're saying, go and do this, right? This is the thing that you need to do. So this is where typically you'd be in the front of the room and you'd be giving your students the direct instruction. Does it have to be you doing it? No, we know that, right? Especially in this hybrid model. It could be a video. It could be a Nearpod lesson. It could be an Edpuzzle lesson. It could be resources put on a Wakelet. It could be anything that you want to give them that's going to explain this process for your students. So whatever it is you're teaching them, this is the meat of the lesson. It could still be you. So if you're doing Hyperdocs synchronous, you're all doing it together. When you get to the explain part, that could be you using Jamboard or whatever it happens to be to explain whatever it is you want them to know. Or maybe it's modeling an activity. It could be your mini session that you might do, like with writer's workshop, you always have those like little mini workshop type of things built in. You could do that as part of your explain. All right, so what I want to do actually is give you, what are we looking at? I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do what a Hyperdoc really does well, is give you time to do the explain part on your own. So I'm going to drop this link into the chat. I'm going to give you till about, let's say 25 after to click on any of these links and start to gather some information on your own. So we're going to practice this and then you'll have a copy of it. So that'll work out well for you as we go through the rest of this presentation. So I'm going to put it in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If you want to click on that, you're going to go to slide number 11 and click and explore. And I will be here to answer any questions. And thank you, Nicole, for telling me that you're Nicole so I can find you when I do attendance. Give you another 3 minutes. If you have questions, start putting them in the chat so we can start to answer them. All right, I'm seeing some great questions come in. I've been answering them in the chat, but I'm going to just say them out loud in case you were looking at the chat. So somebody asked about samples for a specific subject, and absolutely, I'm going to show you how to narrow that search down, where to find them. I'm going to show you that in just a moment. Somebody asked about making a copy of the slide deck. You are welcome to keep the slide deck. Just click the save to your drive button, and you'll have the view only in there. If you want to copy because you want it to be editable for any reason, just click File, make a copy. If you don't know how to do that, I can show you how to do that. Somebody asked about the Hyperdoc website. It is totally free. Hyperdocs were started by 3 educators out in California. I think one was elementary, one was middle, one was high school, or 2 were elementary and 1 was high school. I can't remember exactly. I've met them all. They're lovely ladies, but they put together this amazing website. It had a massive upgrade this spring of all of their resources. Their belief is that we should never be charging teachers for anything as far as resources for our classroom, because we barely make enough anyway. So they do, instead of teacher paid teachers, they do teachers give teachers, and I'm going to show you that in just a moment on their website. But if you Google search Hyperdocs, or you go on Twitter, or you go on Facebook, you're going to find a ton of resources of teachers that are sharing them for free. Never pay for them on teacher paid teachers, because I guarantee that if you see one out there, that it probably has a copyright infringement on somebody else. So they're supposed to be free, and they're always supposed to be free. So I'll show you that. The only thing that's paid for on the Hyperdocs website is they do have some online courses that you could take to learn more about the process. Those they do charge for, since it's a class to go through, and you get a certificate at the end and PD credits, that sort of thing. All right, any other questions as I get back into sharing my screen here? Okay. All right, so let me go back into present mode here and go down to Oh, I didn't label my slides. That's terrible when I forget to do that. Okay, so let's go back to this what is Hyperdoc slide that we were just on. What you saw on your screen is a choice board, and this session is supposed to be on Hyperdocs and choice boards. So I wanted to make sure that you saw that. Typically, you're going to see choice boards in several different places. You can see if you embed a choice board onto a Hyperdoc, it could be in the Explore section, so they can explore freely any of the things that are of their choice. It could be in the Explain portion where they have to gather information, but they can choose how. So your audio learners might want to listen to a podcast. Your visual learners might want to watch a video. Those that like to read can read an article. So you can give them options. So they're gathering the same information, but they're doing it in the way that's comfortable for them. I know a lot of people love podcasts, and I'm really trying to like them, but I find that they don't always hold my interest. I'm a visual learner, so podcasts are hard for me. I like there's one, what is her first name? It's Gonzalez is her last name. I can't think of her podcast. She does the podcast, but then she puts everything into a blog article. Jennifer, her name was Jennifer. I couldn't remember her first name, but she does everything into a blog afterwards. So I don't tend to listen to her podcast, but I read her blog, and I find that to work better for me. So choice in when they're learning really is helpful because it works on the way that works for you. I'm a very fast reader. I actually, when I was in high school, my mother made me take a speed reading class, and it was the best thing I ever did because I can read and comprehend very quickly when I read through a blog. So I know it doesn't take a lot of time for me, but sitting and listening to a podcast where they're having this conversation sometimes just goes a little too slow for me. So a great thing to put into the Explain portion is that choice board to help students where they are. Now, the other thing I have on the here when I'm talking about this choice board is this is all Hyperdoc examples. Most of the things you see on here were taken from the Hyperdocs website. I mentioned I was going to go out to it, so I'm just going to click to it for a moment. Like I said, it went through this massive upgrade in the spring. You'll see that they have a big Hyperdocs Academy that's kicking off in a couple days. I've done these academies with them. That's how I've met all the women. They're wonderful. It really is helpful to understand the thought process, the pedagogy, the design principles of Hyperdocs, and there's so much to it. I've done several different courses with them, and so if you're interested, that's something you can choose to do on your own. They're doing a 20% off membership to their website if you do that. If you want to pay for the actual website, most of it's free anyway, but that gives you access to the courses. They also have a book, and on the page I gave you their study guide and book guide that go along with the book. So if you own the book, you can grab that and have some information with it. It's definitely a book I grab often off my bookshelf because it talks about the principles of the design. In the, and you were asking about specific ones, if you go down to the box that said, what do Hyperdocs look like for my classroom? If you go into the samples and more samples, it's going to bring you out to either the Hyperdocs website or a Padlet of resources. So here, these top ones that you see that are kind of a little bit grayed out, those open up to Google Drive folders of activities. And any of these other ones that you see that are a little bit bolder print are going to bring you out to some Padlet types. If you go to the second one down where it says more samples, what I did is I was collecting Padlets, and I've been doing this for several years. Like when I was out in Schuylerville, I started collecting them onto a Padlet. And so what I did is I created Padlets that are subject specific. So you'll see like novels, science, math ones. These are all Hyperdoc. Each of these is a Padlet of types of Hyperdocs that I found online. These haven't been updated in a long time. You can see some of them haven't been touched in 2 years, but there's definitely more, there's still definitely value in any of these, because one of the best things about design with Hyperdocs is you can take any of these and then redesign it to be your own. You don't have to use it the exact way that you have it. If you're looking for something more specific, you can definitely search that on their Facebook page, on their Hyperdocs website, on Twitter. And then I gave you some what I call exemplars. So this is another Padlet that are in some of the main categories that I know you teach. I know somebody asked about PE, and I have an example of that in a moment. But I did the math, ELA, social studies, science, technology, SEL, some others, some templates, and other resources. So you have access to ones that, these are ones that the Hyperdocs ladies say, these are really solid, good Hyperdocs for you to look at. So I put those on there so you can see, and then some that I found that I thought were really cool, like this virtual classroom was such a cool idea. I wanted to make sure and share that with you. So those were some of the highlights I wanted to show there. I also have my presentation on there, which is just another version of this one, but it goes through some more specifics of ideas for each of the categories. So after you've done the explain is typically the apply part of the Hyperdoc. So this is where normally I'd say, if we were doing this in a workshop model, I would say, go find a Hyperdoc you like, start to edit, or start building your own. Completely up to you. Really, you can build your Hyperdocs anywhere. All right. I built this one on Google Slides. Those of you who were in the Seesaw one the other day, or was that yesterday? Oh my gosh, it seems like it was so long ago now. We did a Hyperdoc on Seesaw. You could do them on Bunsy. There's a lunch and learn through Bunsy that I'm doing next Tuesday, and I'm going to show some examples of how you can set those up. So you can see that on Bunsy. You can build them, and then as far as those are some of the ones you can build on, but you can also have your students apply on here. They can do a Seesaw activity. They can create something in Bunsy. They can use 3D Bear where they're creating an augmented reality scene. They can sketchnote. Flipgrid has added a whole bunch of fun filters that students just love. You can do it on there. Adobe Spark, which I know isn't totally free anymore, but there's definitely plenty still free. On Adobe Spark, they can create a post, a website, a video, anything you want them to do. You can use your G Suite tools, or if you're Microsoft School, you can definitely use your Microsoft tools to build whatever it is you want the students to do. Give them a choice and let them pick where they want to do, where they want to showcase what they've learned. And then the sharing. So this should be an authentic audience. So it should be more than just submitting the work to Google Classroom, they get a grade on it and they move on. Sometimes that's exactly what you need. But the idea with Hyperdocs is that you take it to the next level, because everybody knows that if you tell the students somebody other than their teacher is going to see the work, they're going to do a better job. So an authentic audience could be inviting an author in. It could be posting it to a Padlet so the students can have that conversation back and forth. It could be putting it on Flipgrid. It could be creating a book in Book Creator. Wherever you're going to be sharing this out, it could be posted on a blog on Seesaw. Wherever you're going to be sharing it, it should be looked at by an authentic audience. The really great thing with us going to the virtual in the spring is a lot more authors and business people were more apt to agree to come into your classroom through a Zoom and have that discussion. So I saw some teachers have their students create something and then do a Shark Tank kind of activity to sell their item to local business people through a Zoom. I saw a lot of authors commenting back and forth with students and sharing feedback on what they did based on their book. So there's lots of ways you can share that process. The reflection piece, like I said, this is actually one of the most important parts of the Hyperdoc. The students can do this any way they want. You can do it on a Padlet or a Wakelet. You can have them do it on a Jamboard. They can do a Flipgrid response. Synth is like a mini podcast one that you can do where the students can do their reflections very easily and very simply. They could just do it right on a Google form. They could do it on a Google Doc. It really doesn't matter. I did one on an app called My Avatar. So just going to show you that real quick.
Being a Sphero hero has allowed me to grow and learn in so many ways. This community has incredible educators from all over the world.
So you can see I'm just adding my voice to it, but I'm using a fun app, so I'm not showing my face. Students love that. So if you say, make it on anything you have, if you're high school, your kids have their phones and they want to just build it on something and send it through, let them do that. They can use the camera right on their computer and do it on there. You could do it any way you want for them to reflect, but just give them a moment to reflect on it. It could be that they're writing in their writing journals. It could be that they're doing a video. You can give them choices in here as well. And then I talked about the extend already. This is where you're giving your students an opportunity to learn more. And that learn more could be either through a game, an activity. It could be taking them out to other sites. What you see, I mentioned Jigspace earlier. This is Jigspace where the students are designing and looking around to try to figure out what things are and the size of things. And, it just gives them different information as far as whatever the jig happens to be. All right, so you asked for examples. So again, if you want to go out to page, what page am I on? If you want to go out to page 16 on your slide deck, and 17 and 18 and 19. So you have 4 slides. What is it? I'm going to give you till 11, well, just based on time. You know what? I'm going to keep going on, and then I'm going to give you time at the end because I don't want to run out of time to do choice boards. But there's going to be plenty of examples on those 16, 17, 18, and 19 to show you some examples of some really great Hyperdocs. But let's go on to slide 20. Let me go on to choice boards before I run out of time. I could spend the whole hour on Hyperdocs. So we're going to talk about choice boards. So the idea with choice boards is that there's a way to organize work for your students. They should be fun. They are differentiated. They're student driven. They're engaging for your kids, and you can create them anywhere. So all of these I created right in Google Slides. You can create them in Keynote, in Padlet. You know, you can create them in Seesaw. Wherever you want to create your choice boards, you can do that. So I wanted to give you some examples of choice boards, and I just have a whole bunch of links for you here. I'm just going to go out to one just to kind of show you. Here's a digital storytelling board, just to kind of show you what one would look like. Again, you'll see that there's information at the bottom on who created it. Anything that you see that somebody has created, their request is that you make a copy and modify it any way you wish, but you might want to put inspired by and keep their name on it. That's the only thing most of them request you do if you're going to use something that they've already created. All right, so at the very bottom of your screen, write the created by or inspired by, and then you can use this any way you want. This is view only. Anything that you have that's view only, you're going to click on File, make a copy of entire presentation, and then you can rename it anything you want. So I'm just going to call it a template, digital storytelling choice board. I click OK. And it's going to open up a new slide, and it's going to be fully editable for me. So now I can change anything I want on here to customize it to be how I want it to be. You'll notice that her page is an 8.5 by 11 page. You can do that when you're creating these choice boards. You might want a larger page than your typical 4 by 3. If you go up to File, Page Setup, you can change to whatever size you'd like it to be. So here you can see she did 8.5 by 11, but you can change this to be as big or as small as you want it to be to fit all of your boxes in as you're going through. Just to show you another one, this is like a capstone project. So this one you can see there's a lot of information on here, but what the teacher did is they used the sides around it to give information. You could also put it down here in the teacher comment section or the speaker notes. And you know that if you grab those 3 dots, you can make it smaller or larger, so you can put more information under the slide. But the students will have this information. They'll go through each of these boxes to be able to do this choice board, or they'll pick one of these. So they'll get to choose what they're going to do. So this is a fun one you can actually do at the beginning of the year instead of a capstone, where they can do a self-portrait kind of activity. So there's another one. Again, if you want to make a copy of it, you click File, make a copy, entire presentation, and then save it. Just to show you one more, if I can get to it, because let's do this. It doesn't want me to get to it because I have all of my other boxes up here. So this one's fun. So I thought I would show you this one. So this is a choice man board, so kind of like Pac-Man. And what you would do is put the directions and then what option they get to do on each of these. So this is a template, again, that you can use. That would be super engaging for your kids because it looks just like Pac-Man. All right, it says each ghost is linked to a specific slide in the presentation. So as the students click on the different ones, you can link these to another slide. If you don't know how to do that, let me show you that. Let me just make a copy of it and I can show you that. File, make a copy, entire presentation. So what you would do is you would click on the ghost, all right, and then we're going to click on our linking, which mine didn't come. Why didn't mine link come? Insert link. It doesn't want me to link that. It could be the way they put the design in. But typically, here, I'll show you on mine. So let's say I wanted to link my little Bitmoji. I highlight her. I click on the link icon, and then I can link this to a different slide in the presentation, so I can pick which slide you want to put it to. We talk about this more in the Choose Your Own Adventure webinar that's coming up on how to do that. Okay, so there's some examples just to give you an idea what they look like. What do you put in the boxes? You can put in a podcast, you can put in a video, you can give them resources, directions, math problems, an activity. You can give them articles, images, memes. It really doesn't matter what you put in the boxes. It's however you want to design it. So to create these, what you're going to do is create the boxes. So let me come out of the mode here. I'm just going to add in a slide below it. So I'm just going to click the plus. And I'm actually going to change the layout to be blank if it'll let me. Yeah. I'm just going to make a white slide. Or maybe a gray slide. There we go. Okay. So I have this plain background. I just want to show you so it's basic versus having the background that I showed you there. I'm going to use the shape tool. I'm going to grab a shape. So I like to use the rounded rectangle, I guess, the one with the rounded edges, and I'll create my squares. All right. And once you have one square, you're going to design it the way you want it to be. So maybe I want this to be a purple square with a hot pink edge around it. Why not? That sounds fun. So I've got this square. Now I want to create more of them. So as soon as this square is highlighted, I'm going to hit Control on my computer or Command on your Mac, and I'm going to hit the D. And what that does is it allows me to duplicate as many of these as I want, and then I can move them around my screen. So I can choose how I want to organize my choice board as I'm going through once I have them. All right, I delete that one. All right, so I've got my 6 here. It would bug me until they're all perfectly aligned. I would work on that a little bit. And then I've got these slides or these squares to work on. You can type right within the square. So I'm going to pull a fun font, and I'm going to put in choices. So this is choice 1. And then I might put this as 2. You know, you can do whatever you'd like in these boxes. And then anything, once you have all of the information in, you can put in images that you layer on top and then link the layer. But all of these should link out to whatever it is the activity that you'd like to do. On the side here, you probably want some sort of text box, and you're going to type in your directions. Another way you can do it, so I'm just going to delete this slide out, is to set it up as a grid. So what I did here is I used Insert, and I went down to Table, and I chose a 3 by 3, so like a tic-tac-toe board. And then what I did was, here's my directions. You're going to add your directions on the side. This choice board might be one that they have to go to each one. So I'm going to do lesson 1 activity, you know, apply, whatever it happens to be, and they're going to come through. I might use arrows to kind of help the students guide through where I want them to go. Or if I don't care which order they go in, I could just leave those arrows off. So I can choose it either way there. All right, so that is some of the design principles. Again, we're not gonna have time to practice today, but you're gonna create your shapes, add your text, add your links, and any directions and videos that you want your students to have, and then they can go through and practice your grid. That box is off. That's gonna bother me too. So let's talk about putting it all together. So we've got Hyperdocs, we've got choice boards, and we got to match them together. So I wanted to show you a few of them. And I know somebody asked about PE, so I'm going to grab this one to start. This is a PE choice board Hyperdoc. All right, so they're going to give you this information on the side on what you need to do to make it your own. All right, so they're going to give you this because it's not mine. Somebody else made it. And what they did is they created a game board. And this is very popular with Hyperdocs, to set up your Hyperdoc as a game board. And there's tons of templates out there if you Google those, and then I gave you some on that choice board earlier. But you're going to see how many, in this one, the weekly expectation is see how many activities you can complete in the week. Can you do 1 each day? Click the images for the activity, choose 1 activity from the Hyperdoc, and complete it for this form. So they have to go through and do each of these. Each one of them takes them to a different activity. And you can see as I hover over, I can see the different activities that they have as they're going through. This one's create your own game, so there's no link. I think they forgot to put the bingo doc on there. So you can see as you're going through, you can change the different activities to be whatever you like. So all of these bring you out to other slide decks that you can use. So they actually gave you a folder that has all of the activities that you were asking for, or anything that's on there. So there's the bingo one to link that on. So you have all of the resources for you to have for your students. You just file, make a copy, and then these are yours to use. And that's the way the choice board was set up for this one. I'll show you another one for another game board. This one's a little bit more basic. It's on a Google Doc. So it says this is all about curiosity. So you're going to go through each of these different activities, and it's going to show you. You just pick which one. They're completely different. Like you've got how to Hyperdoc to ratios. You got and everything in between. You can go through and grab, all of these different activities that they have listed on here. Don't request edit access. If you want a copy of it, you click on File, make a copy, and then call it whatever it is you'd like to do. This Vietnam one I thought was really interesting. It was pretty in-depth. So this one is a pretty large choice board Hyperdoc. So what they're going to do is they go through and they do the parts of the Hyperdoc at the beginning. And then when they get down to, where is it? There we go, at the end. It says choose one of the options below and complete the task on the next slide. So they're going to choose either tunnel rats, how to tell a true war story, and soldier drug use. So they're going to pick one of these topics. And then on the last page, they're going to choose one of these options and put their product on that slide. So this would be a Hyperdoc you would give to your students. They would complete it. Because it's done on a Google slide, the students, you can make a copy for each student, and then the students would submit this back through Google Classroom if you're a Google school. Just to show you the novel study one, this one's by Casey Bell. She does a ton of them. Catlin does a ton of them, if you know her, Catlin Tucker. But this one is, they go through, and it starts with number 5, and then they make 2 choices to make a tic-tac-toe. So they have to start in the middle, and then they grab 2 to make a line, and they choose which activity they want to do on their choice board. So you can see they can be mostly words. This has no links to resources or any of that kind of thing, but it gets them writing, which is super important, right? And they're writing about their stories that they've been reading, their novels. Or it could be very tech heavy like this Vietnam one was, where they have GIFs, they have articles, they have videos, everything that they have to do as they're going through to do that activity. All right, so those are the ones to kind of put it together. So we are down to 10 minutes for questions. So I'm going to leave this slide up, but I'm going to go back and see what questions you have on the things that I shared with you today. A cult of pedagogy, that's it. That's Jennifer Gonzalez. Yes, thank you. It was going to bug me. I was going to look her up afterwards because I remember. Random resource question. Do you have a favorite source for free fonts? I don't ever look for fonts beyond what's on Google. They have so many. So if I'm creating a text box, so let me just add a new slide. I'm here, right? I'm going to grab my text box, right? I've got this here. I click on my fonts. I click on more fonts, and I've got tons and tons in here that I can grab from. That are already built in. So I don't use anything other than what's in Google because I haven't needed to. But there are some really good font ones out there. I do have, however, an emoji keyboard one. Let's see if I have it up here. It's called Emoji Keyboard. And this will give me some other emojis that I can bring in. So let's say I wanted this silly face one with their tongue sticking out in the heart. I click copy message, and then I paste it in, and it will put the emojis in for me. I know that there's a keyboard on mine that I could do control, and there's a space bar, and I can grab different emojis that way. So sometimes I'll do that, but I like the emoji keyboard. The other fun one that I sometimes use is called coolfont.org. And here you type in anything. So I'm going to type in Hyperdoc, and it'll give me these different fonts. All right. And then I just hit copy, and I hit paste, and it'll put in that fun font for me. But typically, 99% of the time, I use the ones that are built into the Google Slides. All of those work on Mac or PC. Yes. What should settings be on a Hyperdoc when assigning them to students? Should they each be asked to make a copy? Yes. Well, yes and no. If you're putting these on Google Classroom, make a copy for each student so they have it. If you're creating them or you're using a template of one you found, then you're going to make the copy and then assign it to your students and make a copy for each student. So that's a really good question. How do you force a copy? Oh, easy. Okay, so I'm over here. I'm on this this slide right here, right? And let's say I wanted to force a copy for you guys to have this. Up at the top in the Omnibox, that's what they call that place where you put your web address. At the end, from the word edit over, you're going to delete those out, and you're going to put in the word copy instead. And as soon as I hit enter, it's going to force a copy. All right, so if I give this to you, I'll put it in the chat. As soon as you click on it, it's going to make an editable copy for you. Great question. Other questions on Hyperdocs, choice boards, designing in Google Slides? I know that was a lot, so if you're just overwhelmed, I totally get it. I'm doing one coming up on Choose Your Own Adventure. We're really going to talk a lot more about the design process of using shapes and linking. So if that's a part that you're not sure of, that's a great one to come to, even if you use it more for Hyperdocs and choice boards than you do for Choose Your Own Adventures. Like I said, and I can actually bring you out to Twitter really quick here. I'm going to go to my Twitter page. If I go into Twitter, even if you don't do anything other than sign in, if you put in hashtag Hyperdocs and hit enter, it's going to show you all the Hyperdocs that are available. One of my Chrome extensions is messing with my MacBook right now. I can tell because my MacBook is frozen. Come on. Let me hit refresh. Try it that way. All right, well, let's try a different window. Maybe it's that window. This is the benefit of having more than one window open. Let's see if this one wants to work. Hyperdocs. This is how I know it's a Chrome extension that's messing with me, because I just was able to do that without a problem on my Queensberry window versus my my Postie's window. All right, so here I am. I put in hashtag Hyperdocs. Teacher gives teacher. This is the one I was mentioning where you're going to find a ton of Hyperdocs. That's the one you want to look at. So follow them. You're going to see a lot that gets posted. And then people are going to be sharing Hyperdocs. So Holly Clark shared this one about Humans of New York. Here's a Hyperdoc about welcome back to school. Here's another one about being a scientist. You can see that people are constantly putting them. Student engagement. You know, you can just see as you go through, there's all these different Hyperdocs. Transformative instruction. You know, all of these are different ones that you can grab. Here's a blog about creating what is trig. Here's one on novels. So, you know what I mean? You can just grab as many as you'd like as you're going through. Here's one on, what is this one? Looks like, oh, looks like they've got some life beyond water or something like that. Inquiry-based Hyperdocs, creating cultural ones. Here's a Hyperdoc for schedule. So you see that as soon as you type in that that hashtag, you're going to find it. If you go out to Facebook, same thing. Join the Hyperdocs group on Facebook. People are posting them all the time. The Hyperdocs ladies are Carly Mora, Sarah Landis, and then where is she? Does she not come up there when you do it? That is so funny. She should come up. Well, maybe if I go to Carly. Not Carly. Carly's not one of them anyway. It's Lisa Highfill, Sarah Landis, and I cannot think of the third name. There's a third name. Kelly Hilton. I knew it would come to me. So Sarah Landis, Lisa Highfill, and Sarah Landis, Lisa Highfill, and Kelly Hilton are your three. So if you go out and you look for them on Facebook or Twitter and you follow them, you're going to see some really cool things that are coming from the Hyperdocs people. All right, we are coming to a close. Oh, how do you put a Hyperdoc in Seesaw? Is it an activity or do you post it to the journal? I created a Hyperdoc in Seesaw activities. And you know how you can do the multiple pages now if you have Seesaw for Schools? Each page of the Seesaw activity was a different part of the Hyperdoc. So I had engage. I got 4 minutes. I can show you real quick. Wrong account though. I got to go this one. Seesaw. Let me log in and I'll show you real quick what that looked like. So if I go into activities, I think I have it on here. Yep. So this one, just to show you, here's the engage, here's the explore, explain, Another part of the explain. So there's a few pages of that. Apply, share, reflect, and then extend. So I created each page of the Seesaw activity to be the different pages that you'd want for your students to complete. And the great thing is now with Seesaw, since you can put videos on each page, I made a little video. I have the links out to the resources that the participants would need. You're able to do all of that right within Seesaw. Great questions. Now I lost you.
Hi, Lori.
Hello.
Sorry, I asked that question. Like, I guess when we do Seesaw, like when I did it in the spring with my students, they were always creating something, and it was like a specific assignment that was done like for one thing. The Hyperdoc seems like it would be like a multi-day activity.
Yeah, so they would save it as a draft wherever they finished for the day, and then they'd go back into it when they needed to work on the next part another day.
Okay, that's probably a very important step. Otherwise, you're only going to get what they do the first day.
Right. So they don't submit it when they're done. They don't, for the day. They submit it when they're done with all of the pages. So so you're going to teach them how to click that draft button and how to find it again the next day to be able to continue.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. That's a huge thing for them to know. All right.
Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you very much.
Yep. Yes, Emily, it does let you upload Google Slides. On that one that I showed, these 4 are Google slide decks. So I just link them on using the link to the shared Google Doc, and the students can watch these 3 or 4, whatever amount you want them to do. You'd give them that in the directions, and they can look at those slides right on there. Yep. All right. Well, it is coming to a close. I'm going to stop the recording, stay on with you for the last 2 minutes if you have any questions. If not, enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your weekend. I hope it's lovely. And, come on back if you have questions. Email me anytime. And you all have a copy of the slide deck already, so I think we're good there. All right. Thanks so much. Good seeing you guys. Have a good one.